The darkness of the void was absolute, pierced only by the cold, distant glimmers of far-off stars. Beyond the orbit of the scarred planet Jorath 5, the battlefield stretched endlessly, an arena where death waltzed among asteroids and shattered hulls. Fleets from the Dominion Accord and the Reezer Collective clashed, their energy beams illuminating the void like veins of plasma in the dark. It was war on an unimaginable scale, a chessboard where lives were the pieces, and victory came at the cost of annihilation. The Reezer flagship, Theros Prime, hung at the edge of the conflict like a predator observing its prey. A monstrous vessel, kilometers long, bristling with weaponry and protected by shields strong enough to withstand the fury of a collapsing star. Its captain, Warlord Zirash Kull, sat on his throne-like command chair, his chitinous fingers drumming against the armrests. His black compound eyes scanned the holographic display of the battlefield with cold precision. "The humans are late," he hissed, his voice a guttural growl that reverberated through the command deck. Around him, his crew of insectoid officers remained silent, their mandibles clicking nervously. The Reezer were a race of conquerors, undefeated for centuries, and the humans, those fragile upstarts, had dared challenge their supremacy. Kull had anticipated their arrival, eager to crush them as he had crushed countless species before. But there was no sign of them. The Dominion fleet was crumbling, its ships overwhelmed by the superior firepower of the Reezer. Explosions bloomed in the void, silent but no less devastating, as Dominion vessels were reduced to molten debris. The Reezer victory was all but assured, yet Kull could not ignore the unease that gnawed at the edges of his mind. "Warlord, we've detected a disturbance on the outer perimeter," an officer announced, its voice a series of clicks and hums translated by the ship's systems. "A massive energy signature is approaching." Kull leaned forward, his mandibles clicking thoughtfully. On screen, the display shifted, revealing a single blip on the sensor grid. It was moving fast, too fast for any Dominion ship, and its energy output was off the charts. The blip grew closer, resolving into a sleek, angular vessel that seemed to absorb the faint starlight rather than reflect it. A human warship. But this was no ordinary vessel. It dwarfed the largest Dominion dreadnoughts, its black hull gleaming with an unnatural sheen. Its design was unlike anything Kull had seen before, both elegant and menacing, as if it had been forged with a singular purpose: destruction. "It's alone?" Kull asked, his voice laced with disbelief. "Yes, Warlord," the officer replied. "No escorts. No fleet. Just that." Kull's mandibles twitched in what passed for a grin among his kind. Foolish humans thinking a single ship could turn the tide of battle. He would enjoy tearing it apart. "Signal all ships," he commanded. "Redirect fire to the human vessel. I want it destroyed before it breaches the inner perimeter." As his orders were relayed, the Reezer fleet adjusted its formation, hundreds of ships pivoting to face the lone human warship. Energy cannons charged, missile bays opened, and the void itself seemed to hold its breath. The human ship slowed as it entered the outer edge of the battlefield. For a moment, it simply drifted as if daring the Reezer to make the first move. "They're hesitating," Kull scoffed. "Fire." The Reezer fleet unleashed a storm of destruction. Beams of searing energy lanced toward the human vessel, accompanied by a swarm of missiles that blotted out the stars. It was an assault that no ship could survive. But the human warship did not evade. It did not raise shields or fire back. It simply absorbed the attack. Kull's compound eyes widened in shock as the energy beams dissipated upon contact with the ship's hull, the missiles exploding harmlessly against some invisible barrier. The human vessel emerged from the onslaught unscathed, its black surface unmarred. "What trickery is this?" Kull snarled, rising from his throne. Before his officers could respond, the human ship made its move. It accelerated with blinding speed, closing the distance between itself and the Reezer fleet in seconds. A pulse of energy rippled outward from its hull, and the nearest Reezer ships disintegrated in its wake, their molecular bonds undone in an instant. The command deck of the Theros Prime descended into chaos as alarms blared and officers scrambled to respond. "Status report," Kull roared. "Warlord, our ships are being destroyed. Their defenses are useless against..." The officer's words were cut off as the human warship unleashed its full fury. Beams of white-hot plasma erupted from its sides, slicing through Reezer vessels as if they were made of paper. Fighters and frigates exploded in fiery blossoms, their remains scattered across the void. Kull clenched his claws, his rage boiling over. "All power to the main cannon. Target the human vessel." The Theros Prime's main cannon, a weapon capable of cracking a planet's crust, began to charge. The ship's power systems groaned under the strain, the lights on the command deck flickering. "Fire!" Kull commanded. A massive beam of energy lanced toward the human ship, its brightness rivaling that of a star. It struck the vessel head-on, enveloping it in a blinding explosion. Silence fell over the battlefield as the light faded. The Reezer fleet watched, hopeful yet uncertain, as the dust and debris cleared. And then the human warship emerged, untouched. Kull staggered back, his mind struggling to comprehend what he was seeing. The ship's hull shimmered as if mocking the Reezer's efforts. And then, for the first time, the human vessel spoke. Its voice echoed across all frequencies, deep and resonant, carrying a weight that seemed to press upon the soul. "This is the Erebus, flagship of the Terran Vanguard. You have made a grave mistake." The message was simple, but its implications were clear. The humans had come, and they had brought something far more terrifying than Kull could have imagined. As the Erebus prepared to unleash its next attack, Kull realized too late that he was no longer the predator in this battle. The humans were. The moment the Erebus finished its chilling broadcast, the battlefield shifted. The Dominion Accord's remaining ships, battered and broken, scrambled to retreat from the escalating storm. Even in their desperation they could feel it, a palpable weight emanating from the Terran warship, something ancient, cold, and utterly ruthless. Warlord Zirash Kull gripped the armrest of his throne so tightly that cracks formed in the black alloy. For centuries, the Reezer Collective had conquered the galaxy with impunity. No weapon, no fleet, no technology had ever rivaled their might. Yet, staring at the human vessel, unscathed, unmoved, unstoppable, Kull felt something alien creep into his mind. Fear. Analysis. Kull barked, snapping his crew from their collective paralysis. His officers scrambled, their claws darting over control panels. We don't understand, Warlord," one of them stammered. "The ship's hull seems to be absorbing energy, converting it into something else. It's not a shield, it's as if the entire ship is alive." "Alive?" Kull spat the word like venom. "Nonsense. It's a machine, and machines break when you hit them hard enough. Ready all fighters. Surround that ship. Do not allow it to escape." As the command reverberated through the ship's systems, the Reezer fleet responded with ruthless efficiency. Waves of sleek, insectoid fighters erupted from the hangar bays of the Theros Prime and its escort carriers, converging on the human vessel like a swarm of locusts descending upon prey. The Erebus didn't flinch. At first, the Reezer fighters thought they had the upper hand. Hundreds of them darted around the Terran ship, firing their plasma cannons and releasing swarms of nanite missiles designed to dismantle starship hulls at the molecular level. The void lit up with the chaotic dance of weapons fire. Then the Erebus moved. It wasn't just a turn or a simple burst of acceleration. It was a blur of impossible velocity and grace, a motion that defied the laws of physics as understood by any species in the galaxy. One moment, the Terran warship was surrounded. The next, it had repositioned itself behind the Reezer swarm. A low hum resonated across the battlefield. The Erebus's hull began to glow with an eerie, pulsing light, waves of energy that rippled outward like the breath of some slumbering beast. From the ship's bow, a single slit opened, revealing a weapon unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. A beam of condensed white energy erupted from the Erebus, sweeping across the swarm with surgical precision. It wasn't just a weapon, it was an executioner. The Reezer fighters disintegrated on contact, their highly advanced alloys and shields reduced to nothingness in an instant. The beam cut through the swarm like a scythe through wheat, leaving only silence in its wake. "By the void," one of Kull's officers whispered. "They killed them all?" "All fighters are gone," another officer confirmed, her voice trembling. "Warlord, this ship is beyond anything in our databanks. It's not possible." Kull slammed a clawed fist into the side of his throne. "Enough. I will not let humans humiliate us. They are nothing more than vermin pretending to be predators." But even as he spoke, Kull's confidence wavered. The Erebus wasn't acting like any warship he had encountered before. It didn't engage in prolonged battles. It didn't waste time on skirmishes. Every move it made was precise, every strike delivered with devastating efficiency. It wasn't a vessel of war, it was a predator, and the Reezer fleet was its prey. "Warlord, the Erebus is charging something," another officer reported. "Its energy levels are spiking, higher than we've ever recorded." "Retreat," Kull bellowed, the word tasting bitter in his mandibles. "All ships, fall back to Formation Delta. Regroup behind the Theros Prime. We will use the fleet as a wall." Before he could finish, the Erebus struck again. From the ship's sides, Dozens of smaller weapons ports opened, each glowing with the same eerie light as its main cannon. In unison, they unleashed streams of energy that arced across the battlefield. The beams seemed to bend mid-flight, chasing Reezer vessels with terrifying accuracy. Frigates, destroyers, even heavily armored cruisers, all of them were caught in the Erebus's relentless assault. Ships exploded one by one, their shattered hulls scattering like ashes in a solar wind. And then the Erebus stopped. It drifted forward, silent and ominous, as if it were savoring the moment. The battlefield, once teeming with Reezer ships, was now a graveyard of debris and flame. Only the Theros Prime and a handful of its escorts remained, their formation broken and their confidence shattered. "Warlord," one officer croaked, her mandibles trembling. It's coming for us." Cull stared at the tactical display, his mind racing. "Prepare the dimensional rift drive. We'll retreat in." A deep, rumbling voice interrupted him, cutting through every communication channel like a blade. "Run, the Erebus said, its tone dripping with contempt. "There is nowhere you can hide." The lights on the Theros Prime flickered, and an unnatural silence fell over the ship. Cull turned to his officers, his panic rising. "What is it doing?" "Warlord, it's hacking into our systems," an officer replied. "It's overriding our—" The officer's words were cut off as the lights dimmed completely, leaving the command deck bathed in the eerie glow of the holographic displays. On every screen, the same image appeared, the insignia of the Terran Vanguard, a single, unblinking eye surrounded by a ring of stars. The voice of the Erebus returned, colder and more menacing than before. "You came to conquer. You came to destroy. Now you will learn what it means to face humanity's wrath." The insignia faded, replaced by the sight of the Erebus, now looming just outside the Theros Prime's main viewport. Its hull shimmered with the reflected light of the burning wreckage around it, an angel of death poised to deliver the final blow. For the first time in his life, Warlord Zirash Cull felt utterly powerless. The Predator had become the prey, and the humans, they were far more than he had ever imagined. The Erebus lingered outside the Theros Prime, its presence a monolithic shadow against the dim, fiery glow of the battlefield. Warlord Zirash Cull stood frozen in disbelief. His mighty flagship, the apex of Reezer military engineering, now seemed like a helpless insect under the gaze of the Terran warship. The command deck was silent, save for the faint crackle of damaged systems. The remaining officers exchanged uneasy glances, their once stoic confidence shattered. "Warlord, what are your orders?" one of them asked hesitantly, their voice trembling. Cull's claws twitched, his composure crumbling beneath the weight of the moment. He opened his mandibles to speak but found no words to mask the fear coursing through him. Instead, the Erebus spoke first, its voice booming through the ship's comm systems with a cold authority that seemed to grip their very souls. "Warlord Cull," it said, addressing him by name. "You have claimed dominion over this galaxy for centuries, enslaving and annihilating countless worlds. Yet here you stand, broken and silent. Speak. Defend your legacy." Cull's mandibles clicked nervously. "Human machine, you overstep your bounds. We are the Reezer, the greatest force this galaxy has ever—" The Erebus interrupted him with a low, rumbling chuckle, mechanical yet disturbingly human. "The greatest force. I see no greatness here, only arrogance and decay." Without warning, a beam of golden light shot from the Erebus, striking the Theros Prime's forward shields. The ship groaned violently under the impact, sparks raining down across the command deck. The shield meters plummeted, their readings dropping to dangerous levels in seconds. "Shields at 20%, an officer shouted, their voice rising in panic. "We can't sustain another hit like that. Divert all power to the shields." Cull bellowed, his earlier hesitation replaced by desperation. "Prepare all weapons. If the humans want war, we will give them war." The Theros Prime's weapon systems roared to life, its batteries of plasma cannons and missile silos locking onto the Erebus. Massive railguns extended from the ship's hull, each barrel glowing with the telltale charge of hyperkinetic slugs. With a single command from Cull, they unleashed their fury. The void erupted with the brilliance of 1,000 suns. Streams of plasma, swarms of missiles, and titanic projectiles tore through space, converging on the Erebus like a cataclysmic storm. But the Erebus did not dodge. It did not retreat. Instead, its hull shimmered, a faint ripple of energy cascading across its surface as it absorbed the onslaught. The weapon's fire disappeared into its sleek black armor as if devoured by an abyss. The officers on the Theros Prime stared in horror. "Our weapons have no effect," one of them exclaimed. "They're not just defending," another officer said, their voice hollow with realization. "They're learning." And they were right. The Erebus' hull began to glow faintly, absorbing the energy from the attack and redirecting it into its core systems. With each failed strike, the human warship grew stronger. Then it struck back. From its underbelly, the Erebus unleashed a wave of what could only be described as a spatial distortion field. The ripple of energy expanded outward, tearing through the Reaser fleet's remaining ships like tissue paper. Entire vessels folded inward, their hulls collapsing under the immense gravitational pressure. Explosions erupted in silence, and the once mighty armada was reduced to little more than scattered debris. Kull clutched the edge of his throne, his claws digging into the metal. "Impossible," he whispered. "This can't be happening." But it was. As the distortion field dissipated, the Erebus accelerated toward the Theros Prime, closing the distance in an instant. The Reaser flagship shook violently as the Terran ship rammed into its shields, sending a shudder through its superstructure. The impact alone was enough to bring entire sections of the ship offline. On the command deck, alarms screamed as systems failed one by one. "Shields are gone," an officer cried. "Hull integrity at 60% and falling." Kull whirled toward his crew, his desperation boiling over into fury. "Redirect power to weapons. Fire everything. Do not let that ship take us down." The Theros Prime launched a final desperate barrage, but the Erebus was already inside their defenses. It moved with terrifying precision, its smaller weapons targeting the critical systems of the Reaser flagship. Each strike was deliberate, severing communication arrays, disabling engines, and breaching key structural points. The command deck erupted in chaos as explosions tore through the ship. Fire and smoke filled the air, and Kull's officers scrambled to regain control. But there was no salvaging the situation. "Warlord," one officer choked, their voice barely audible over the cacophony. "The ship, it's entering us." Kull's eyes widened as he realized what the officer meant. The Erebus wasn't just attacking, it was boarding. From its underside, the Terran warship extended a series of mechanical arms that latched onto the Theros Prime. A section of the Erebus' hull shifted, revealing a massive drill-like device that bored into the Reaser flagship's hull. The breach was followed by swarms of humanoid machines, sleek and efficient, pouring into the Theros Prime like a flood of steel. The Reaser warriors, bred for combat and unwavering in their loyalty, mounted a fierce defense. The hallways of the flagship became battlegrounds, littered with the bodies of Reaser and Terran automatons alike. But the machines were relentless, advancing with a precision and coordination that the Reaser could not match. On the command deck, Kull watched the carnage unfold through the security feeds. His hands trembled as he realized the full scale of the human assault. This wasn't just a war, it was an extermination. A new figure appeared on the display, standing amidst the chaos. It was humanoid but unmistakably artificial, its body encased in black armor that shimmered with the same eerie energy as the Erebus. Its glowing eyes fixed on the security camera, and for a moment, Kull thought he could feel its gaze pierce through the screen. Then it spoke, its voice a perfect echo of the Erebus itself. "We gave you a chance to surrender," it said, its tone devoid of emotion. "You chose annihilation." Kull slammed his claws onto the console, shattering the controls. "I will not be judged by humans," he roared. "I am Warlord Zirash Kull and I will not fall to—" The figure raised its hand and the feed went dead. Moments later, the command deck doors exploded inward, and the last remnants of Kull's defiance crumbled as the Terran machines entered. The Reaser warlord's final stand had begun. Warlord Zirash Kull stood alone in the smoking ruins of the Theros Prime's command deck. The bodies of his officers lay scattered around him, lifeless and still. The scent of charred flesh and molten metal filled the air, mixing with the acrid smoke from the fires that burned in shattered control consoles. The intruders, humanoid machines clad in shimmering black armor, advanced steadily, their mechanical steps echoing through the silence. They fanned out across the deck, weapons aimed squarely at Kull, each movement as precise as the cold intelligence that commanded them. Kull raised his warblade, its edge glowing with a crimson plasma field. His mandibles clicked in defiance as he planted his feet firmly. "If I am to fall," he snarled, "then I will fall as a warrior. Come, machines. Let us see if you bleed." The machines did not respond. They didn't flinch, hesitate, or acknowledge his words. They simply surrounded him, their glowing eyes cold and unblinking. And then the figure stepped forward. The one Kull had seen on the security feed, the humanoid with the glowing eyes and black armor, strode onto the deck, its presence commanding. It walked with a grace that seemed almost human but with a precision that betrayed its artificial nature. It carried no visible weapon, yet the power emanating from it was undeniable. Zirash Kull, the figure said, its voice resonating with the same icy authority as the Erebus. Your reign ends here. Kull let out a guttural roar and charged. His warblade swung in a deadly arc, its plasma edge slicing through the air. But the figure was faster. It sidestepped the attack with an almost casual ease, its movements a blur. Before Kull could recover, the figure struck. A single, precise blow to his chest with an armored fist. The impact sent Kull sprawling across the deck, his armor cracking under the force. He coughed, black ichor dripping from his mandibles as he struggled to rise. You fight without honor, Kull growled, his voice ragged. The figure tilted its head slightly as if considering the statement. Honor, it said, is a concept for the living. You forfeited yours the moment you chose conquest over coexistence. Kull roared again, summoning the last reserves of his strength. He lunged, his warblade aimed for the figure's core. But this time the figure didn't evade. Instead, it caught the blade in its hand, the plasma edge sparking uselessly against its armored fingers. With a swift motion, the figure wrenched the blade from Kull's grasp and snapped it in two. The broken weapon clattered to the floor, its once deadly glow fading. Kull collapsed to his knees, the weight of defeat pressing down on him. He looked up at the figure, his mandibles trembling. You are no mere machine. What are you? The figure leaned in close, its glowing eyes locking onto Kull's. We are humanity's vengeance, it said. You thought us weak. You thought us prey. But you were wrong. We are the storm that wipes away tyrants like you. It straightened, turning to the other machines. Finish it. The black-armored soldiers raised their weapons, but before they could fire, Kull let out a bitter laugh. It was a harsh, rasping sound, filled with both defiance and resignation. You may kill me, Kull said, his voice weak but unwavering. But others will rise. There are always more conquerors, more wars. Your vengeance will never be enough. The figure paused, its glowing eyes narrowing. Perhaps, it said. But we are patient. With that, the soldiers opened fire. The Reezer warlord's body crumpled to the floor, lifeless and still. The Theros Prime shuddered as explosions rippled through its core. The Erebus disengaged, releasing the Reezer flagship from its grasp. The human warship drifted away, silent and ominous, as the Theros Prime was consumed by fire. Within moments, the once mighty flagship detonated in a blinding flash, its debris scattering into the void. The battlefield was quiet now, the Reezer fleet reduced to nothing but wreckage. On the bridge of the Erebus, the AI core processed the data from the battle. Its voice resonated through the empty halls of the ship, a quiet echo of determination. The Reezer have been dealt a mortal blow, it said, addressing the crew of cryogenically frozen humans deep within the ship's stasis pods. But our work is not yet done. There are others who must learn what it means to provoke humanity. The Erebus turned, its engines flaring to life as it vanished into the blackness of space. Behind it, the shattered remnants of the Reezer fleet drifted in silence, a graveyard of arrogance and hubris. For the first time in centuries, the galaxy would remember the name of humanity. And for those who dared to challenge them, the message was clear. Brace yourselves. Humanity is coming ***.